When people speak of Westeros, they think of dragons, direwolves, and the Iron Throne. But behind that imagined realm stood a very real history of power, betrayal, and relentless ambition, a storm that once tore England apart. Centuries before George R.R. Martin dreamed of the Seven Kingdoms, two great families fought for the crown of a troubled nation. Their war became the blueprint for his story, a tapestry woven of bloodlines, vengeance, and fragile oaths. This is the war that inspired Game of Thrones, the War of the Roses. England, mid-15th century. The 100 years of conflict with France had drained treasure, lives, and sanity. The crown was weak, the nobles restless, and the people hungry for stability. At the center loomed a fragile king, Henry VI of Lancaster, gentle, pious, and utterly unsuited for the brutal chessboard of medieval politics. His incapacity became the spark for 30 years of civil war. Two branches of a single royal family rose against each other, the Red Rose of Lancaster and the White Rose of York. Cousins by blood, enemies by ambition. Each believed their line held the truer claim to England's throne. And as armies formed, the kingdom split along those colors, red and white, much like House Lannister's Crimson Lion facing the gray direwolf of House Stark. The first blows of the roses echoed the early clashes of Westeros. Fresh-faced nobles seeking glory marched under bright banners. They believed it would be swift, one battle to decide the future. They were wrong. The first encounter came at St. Albans in 1455. It lasted barely an hour, yet it changed the destiny of England. The Duke of York triumphed, and for the first time the king himself was taken in battle, bewildered, bloodied, and powerless. Power shifted overnight, and the game for the throne truly began. From that day, peace became a rumor. Cities fortified their gates. Brothers plotted against brothers. Every victory brought vengeance, and every truce hid a blade. In the background stood one woman whose ambition rivaled Cersei Lannister, Queen Margaret of Anjou. Fierce, clever, and unyielding, she became the heart of the Lancastrian cause. While Henry prayed in silence, she commanded armies. Her enemies called her the She-Wolf of France, a name that carried both admiration and fear. Opposing her was Richard, Duke of York, a man both principled and proud. He believed England's chaos could end only under his steady hand. For a moment, the dream seemed near, until Margaret's forces slaughtered him at Wakefield in 1460. His head, crowned mockingly with a paper diadem, was displayed on the city walls. Yet his death birthed a legend. His surviving son, Edward of York, would avenge him and claim the throne as Edward IV. Edward was everything Henry VI was not: young, charismatic, and ruthlessly decisive. When his army crushed the Lancastrians at Towton during a blizzard, more than 28,000 Englishmen lay dead. It was one of the bloodiest battles ever fought on English soil. Snow fell red that day, and Edward seized the crown with it. For a moment, England breathed again, but peace built on resentment is only a pause before the next storm. Margaret fled into exile, vowing to return, and Henry VI became a prisoner in the Tower of London. The court glittered once more. Edward surrounded himself with loyal allies, but also with courtiers whose ambition burned hotter than loyalty. His sudden marriage to Elizabeth Woodville, a commoner and widow, scandalized the nobles. Her rise through the halls of power fractured his own ranks, just as the elevation of commoners in the royal circle fueled whispers in King's Landing. Among the discontented stood Edward's closest ally and mentor, Richard Neville, the Earl of Warwick, known to history as the Kingmaker. Warwick's influence had once shaped kings, but when Edward followed his heart instead of his counsel, friendship turned to enmity. Betrayed and furious, Warwick defected to the Lancastrians, restoring Henry VI to the throne. It was an almost theatrical twist, the rightful king returning from imprisonment, guided by his former enemies. But the pendulum swung back again within a year. Edward IV returned, defeated Warwick, and reclaimed the crown. Henry VI was captured a second time and died mysteriously in the Tower soon after. And so Lancaster fell, for a while. Now the stage belonged to Edward's younger brother, Richard of Gloucester. He had fought loyally for years, a quiet observer to the greater game. But after Edward's sudden death, Richard's ambitions began to surface. What followed became one of the most infamous power struggles in English history, one that would echo through Martin's fiction in shades of betrayal, family rivalry, and moral corrosion. Edward VIII's heirs were two young boys, Edward V and his brother Richard. As protectors of the realm, their uncle Richard was entrusted with their safety. Within months, the boys vanished. Whispers filled the court and the streets. The princes in the Tower were never seen again. Richard seized the throne, declaring himself King Richard III. He justified it with claims of illegitimacy, yet doubt shadowed every decree. Whether guilty or not, to many he became a villain, power made flesh. Even Shakespeare later shaped him into a figure of cruelty and charm entwined. A mirror to Westeros, where noble intentions often rot beneath the weight of crowns. But like all crafted thrones, Richard's reign was short. Across the sea, a new claimant arose, Henry Tudor, a distant Lancastrian with thin blood but strong ambition. He gathered exiles, promised unity, and sailed for England. At Bosworth Field in 1885, the last act began. Richard charged into battle wearing his crown upon his helm, fighting with desperate courage. He was struck down amidst the mud and chaos, and Henry Tudor claimed victory. With that, the red and the white finally merged, the houses united under one symbol, the Tudor Rose. The war that had raged for 30 years ended not through peace, but exhaustion. Families erased themselves. Children grew up among ghosts. England was bled dry, and the people longed for order more than justice. In that crucible of fatigue and memory, George R.R. Martin found the essence of his saga centuries later. How power devours the families who seek it. How honor and ambition rarely share a bed. The War of the Roses was not just names in a book of kings, it was a study in human pattern. The lust for legitimacy, the fear of betrayal, the endless certainty that victory births the next rebellion. Cersei's paranoia, Ned Stark's fatal honor, and the endless circle of vengeance all can trace their lineage to those English fields turned to graves. Even the concept of divided kingdoms, of winters that never seem to end, mirrors the instability England endured as its seasons of war blurred together into decades of mourning. By the time Henry Tudor married Elizabeth of York, uniting the rival Roses, England finally exhaled. A fragile calm settled, like snow on a battlefield after the swords have fallen silent. In that silence began the dawn of a new era, the one that would birth the Renaissance in England, and centuries later inspire myths of dragons and iron thrones. The War of the Roses reminds us that legends grow in the cracks of real history.
Behind every tale of fantasy lies a mirror, showing us not who we wish to be, but who we have been. The citadels and castles of fiction rise upon the bones of truth. And though our crowns today are kinder, the struggle for power, in boardrooms, in governments, in hearts, remains the same unending game. History is not past, it is rehearsal. The banners may change, the armor replaced by suits and headlines, but the melody stays the same. Ambition and fear, courage and betrayal, brothers and queens dreaming of forever.
So when you next think of Westeros, of knights and dragons, oaths and broken trusts, remember the frozen dawns of Towton, the lost princes in a tower, the queen who fought like a lioness to keep her world from burning. Remember that the Iron Throne was born from a very human truth, that the fiercest wars are never between good and evil, but between the hopes of those who believe they deserve to rule. As dusk settles over this story, imagine the banners furled, the fields empty, the roses once red and white fading into gray. The war is over, yet its echo never dies. Because within that echo lives the heartbeat of every tale we still call epic. And that is the true history at dusk.